No, now we're live. All right.
Good morning. This is our post-observation conference with Ms. Ward. And if you'd like to say hello, Ms. Ward, go ahead.
Hello to everybody watching this. No, I'm excited. I'm excited for the conference. This will be good to see what Ms. Witt has to offer me in the way of guidance.
Okay. First question. This was from our English language arts content area in the subject of allegories. I'd like to hear from you how you thought the lesson went.
I thought it went really well, really well. I'm going to say we only had limited number of kids in the class, which makes the discussion pretty limited. But for the ones that were there, I felt like they did a nice job answering the questions and going beyond kind of surface level answers, which was good. And the other thing that I was pleased with, which was I was hoping they would do, would be able to take that information and then relate it to content. So take that discussion, those initial questions we had and relate it to the content. So I was happy with that. No behavior issues, things like that. So that was good. Everybody, what I felt like, was engaged in what they were doing. So I considered it a win for the day.
Very good. Very good. What do you use your instruction by knowing the background of the kids? Did that help guide your instruction as far as differentiated instruction on their levels?
It does. I never know who's going to be in there, so I kind of have to be ready for everything. And I do know each kid kind of where they are, so I know when they come into that live lesson room if I need to do any scaffolding for what we're going to do. So do I need to start kind of way back and build up to get to where we need to be? And then I also know quite a few of them. I know their interest, so I can kind of catch them and get them engaged in what we're doing based on that. So I would definitely say that does happen during the differentiation, or that helps with the differentiation, is being able to know them when I make those lesson plans.
So during your lesson, was there anything that did concern you regarding how the lesson went?
Not concerning in the way like, oh, that was horrible. Like, I would definitely like more students to be there. Obviously, there were no major red flags to me because, I opened it up with some questions that could have gone anywhere, and I was kind of ready for for students to take a political side. And, and like I told them, I said, we're very polarized. People believe this way or this way. There's no gray area. And I was afraid it was going to maybe get somebody that was really strongly on one way, pitted against somebody that wasn't, but it didn't do that. So I'm not going to say there's any major concerns, just I wish there was more people there, but no major concerns.
Well, I felt you definitely kept the students engaged, relating it to the most recent current events. I was surprised that the one student didn't hear about it.
Right.
But with the Las Vegas shooting, typically most people have heard about it. So it was interesting to see that he had no idea.
Right.
So what was your main objective for this lesson?
I wanted my students to be able to come up with a theme for their allegory. Writing an allegory is extremely challenging. That's very high level for students to be able to do. So if you've got a kid coming in that is weak in any area, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to write an allegory. So I wanted to break it down to the most basic pieces and saying, okay, figure out what it is. What lesson do you want to teach? What's the moral of the story? And if they can get that, then they can start to build from there. So that was my objective, was that for them to be able to walk away with having what that lesson was going to be, or an understanding of that's what they have to do to be able to start the story.
And so helping them know what they had to do, how did you help them accomplish that objective?
We started out by looking at current events, and that was the most relatable thing for them right now. We talked about current events, and because it is, again, I use this a lot, but it is so polarizing. People tend to feel pretty strongly about something, whatever it is, they feel strongly about something. I use that for them to pull out a lesson that they can learn. And like I don't want to use the word luckily, but there was a lot of information there was for them to be able to use because of current events. But I was able to use those current events for them to pull out some themes out of there, because there's something going on in the world today that everybody feels strongly about. It's not all the
Right.
same somethings, but there's something that they feel strongly about.
Did you collect any artifacts? And if you did, how do you use artifacts to drive your instruction?
So I would say their initial writings I use as artifacts. If they are, so like what we would call a rough draft, I almost hate that terminology anymore because kids don't actually really write like that anymore. But it's what we've always known as the rough draft or the sloppy copy. Um, but if they're getting challenged, if they're having a hard time with that initial copy, I'll have them go back to their brainstorming and I'll pull their brainstorming as an artifact um, to see what sorry, I lost my train of thought. Where they need to go from there. So I use those as artifacts. Rubrics that we use to grade the assessments, or that I would use to grade the assessments, that's definitely an artifact that I would use to drive my instruction. And it goes back to that personalization piece where I can pull out an individual's brainstorm or their initial copy to be able to help them drive their specific instruction, not necessarily for the whole group. That's how I use artifacts.
And what other ways, as you talked about, you have the brainstormer, are there any other ways that you would assess regarding allegories? Do they just write on this one topic, or do you have
So,
any
okay,
quick checks?
I have lots of students who have a hard time going from head to paper.
Yep.
It gets stuck in their head and they don't know how to get it out. So if they can tell me the story,
Sure.
we can do it. We can do a couple of things. So, and this isn't every student, but for those ones that really do get stuck, I have them either tell me the story that they've constructed, and we assess it based on that, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm not necessarily looking for the writing pieces in this one. I'm looking for, are they able to develop a story around this lesson? Are they able to have these characters do these certain things to make this lesson happen? And if they can do that and construct that in their head and verbalize it to me, that's what I need to be able to assess them. And then some kids, if you can help them, they want to be able to write it. So if you can help them verbalize those initial thoughts and get it on paper from there, then they can go into a more developed paper. So that reassessment would happen a little bit earlier than that final one, but helping them or letting them verbalize it instead of writing it helps.
Sure. Is there anything that you would do the same, and is there anything that you would do differently in regards to this future lesson?
Maybe differently, having some kind of visual there for them. Maybe
Sure.
have a list of current events. Maybe I should have had them list the events, and I could have written them down so they could have seen. Like, I was happy with how the discussion went, and I liked the framework of the lesson, but I probably, like I said, should have listed it or allowed them to construct the list, because that probably would have activated their brain a little bit sooner. That probably would have been a little bit better.
So talking about the visual, with the students who didn't have any idea about the current event in discussion, what about utilizing like a quick video that could just brief him as to what went on?
Absolutely. Like, that would have been, I mean, I could have used, and again, that, looking back, you're like, oh, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do this?
Right,
I could have done video clips, from things, because we talked about Puerto Rico a lot. Like, I could have had video clips of the hurricane, like prepping for the hurricanes, what the aftermath is, videos of Las Vegas, or lots of other things. Oh no.
Right.
Okay, sorry, I thought I froze. If I froze.
I think you're okay.
Okay, good. Okay. So things like that probably would have been beneficial to add to it.
Right. So after you reflect on your lessons, what are some goals thinking about your own professional development? What are some of your own individual goals?
As related to this lesson specifically or just in general?
In general.
Like I always want to get better. I always want to have more techniques to be better at the personalization piece. Like I feel like that's the most difficult. I mean, it is. It's what we try to do in teaching all the time,
Right.
and we only have so much time and so much, but I want to get better at that personalization. So if I can figure out how to contain data or how to maybe come up with a bank of like instructional techniques to fit different, not personalities, but different places that kids might get stuck, something like that. So I definitely like to be able to enhance my ability to personalize instruction for students.
It's a good plan. Good plan. What I'd like to talk about are the teaching standards and some strengths that I felt that you did excellent at. And there's a couple that I felt needed a little extra growth.
Okay.
I thought, first of all, in standard one, I thought you accepted and demonstrated responsibility for creating a classroom culture that supports the learning of every student. I felt that you were able to engage each and every student, and you discussed individually the thoughts from each student. Do you agree that that's something that you did well in that lesson?
Yes, I'm going to take any kind of compliment you're going to give me. No, I do.
Okay.
I would agree with that one for sure.
The second one is using standard two, using knowledge of student development to make learning experiences in the content area meaningful and accessible for every student. And that was going off of using the Las Vegas situation, the hurricane situation. Those were the most current events that the students should be aware of. In standard 4, demonstrates flexibility and responsiveness in adjusting instruction to meet the student's needs. So I felt you did a really good job in that, because going into the lesson, you had no idea that one student wouldn't have any idea about Las Vegas. So you had to take a step back and get him caught up with the other student that was there, to be able to enhance your instruction by comparing, by utilizing the information from the Las Vegas shootings. So I thought you did a really good job on that. And as well as creating a safe and purposeful learning environment, you did a good job, because both kids were that we had in the lesson were willing to open up to you and discuss to you openly about the situation. So they obviously felt very comfortable. So kudos to you on the strengths that you had.
Thank you. Thank you.
There were 3 areas that I thought that I didn't see, but it could have been there during your lesson, was relates ideas and information within and across the content area. You did a great job within the content area, but what is something, or how could you relate that across your content areas, such as the math, obviously social studies would definitely be an easier one. Right. Do you have a thought on that?
No, like I think that's actually a really good point. Like I could have easily brought in the social studies teacher. I mean, specifically brought her in to talk about like the current event side of it, or I could have, related that to social studies or even history. Like if I would have went back further, like I didn't have to necessarily do just current events. I could have done something historically, like what did we learn from World War II? Like we could take something away from that, or so I could have definitely pulled in cross-curricular. Probably not. I think math would have been harder maybe, and science I would have had to stretch a little bit more for that. But definitely social studies could have been a nice bridge that as an extension to what I did.
Right. And regarding to standard 3, using the students' individual developmental needs, backgrounds, and interests in planning for instruction, did you have any knowledge of your students' backgrounds, like are any on an IEP, any on any other accommodations that could have been addressed or should have been addressed?
I did have knowledge, and one of them maybe had a 504. Like I should be able to tell you right now specifically. But the information is there. Like I did know their background, but probably not as specifically to help them, support them individually in that lesson. So I probably could have looked more in depth at that for sure.
Sure, sure. But overall, I think they did. I think they did did a fine job. And the last area was guiding students in goal setting and assessing their own learning. What are your thoughts about helping them set a goal? Did they know what their next plan was in each step?
Actually,
What are your
that's a
thoughts
really
about
good
goal
point.
setting?
That's a really good point. Like I could have individually said, okay, so now what are we doing? Like what's next? What are you going to do? What's your time frame for this? What is, is there a certain length that you want it to be? Is there a certain something I could have drawn out some kind of goal for them for sure, to make it, because we all know that, if you can create a goal, you have a much better, and you write that goal down, you have a much better chance of attaining that goal once you verbalize it and written it down. So just to keep them moving forward, that actually is a great idea and something I could have easily added into that lesson.
That's a good thought for next time. Those are the questions that I have for you. What I'd like to do is discuss, based on the questions and the discussion that we had in your growth and strength areas, what would be a responsibility, or what would be your next step in regards to maybe the next lesson, or anything that you would change just in the discussion that we talked about, is specifically about the strength areas, the growth areas that you needed to build on strength?
Right. Like, I think definitely the goal setting. That's something I can very, very easily incorporate into my lessons later today. Adding, and whether it be they're writing it on a Post-it note and they put it on their notebook, what are these next steps that you want to take? That's something I can definitely add. And I always think having a discussion like across the disciplines or across the content, that will never hurt you. And
Right.
so making sure if I have something coming up that could be connected anywhere else, making sure I follow up with those teachers. And even if they're not in my lesson, just being able to say, hey, is there anything specifically you think that I should hit on this? Because
Right.
I'm not an expert in that area. That's why I didn't major in that area, but they are. So
Right.
allowing them to be able to support me in that way, which will in turn support the kids. So that's definitely two things that I could take out of that, starting today, to do differently.
Good decision regarding helping the kids. I think that'd be a great goal for you to do. Any other comments that you may have regarding the conference? Otherwise,
No, I don't think I have any questions or anything. I think it's been a good process. No, nothing else I can think of.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time. I think you did a great job, and look forward to working with you in the future.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.